Hello everyone, this is part 11 of What If Naruto Was Neglected and Was Trained by Shisui, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. A few more months had gone by for the two kids until they finally entered the foreign land of Lightning Country. Sound Country had not given him any problem and crossing the border was easier than he had anticipated. They had to pass by an even smaller country, Hot Water Country. It was relatively peaceful there and they didn't even come into contact with a single bandit of shinobi. Actually, when Naruto thought about it, he didn't even know if Hot Water had any shinobi. The rumor was that Hot Water had a very strong alliance with Kumogakure, so they never needed to establish a shinobi system since the people who lived there were mere merchants and fishermen who helped supply most food and clothing for Kumo. The first steps into Lightning Country were interesting to say the least. The air itself was much different than Sound Country, and even Konoha for that matter. It felt almost thicker, but it was much easier to breathe and he found himself straining less and less as the days went by. The country itself was somewhat plain. Naruto had become used to Konoha's vast sea of trees in an almost ending forest with bushes or flowers growing in almost every corner, giving off such a serene and pleasant aroma. But Lightning Country looked dull, the ground itself looked ragged and cracked for years of wear and tear. Mountains surrounded the borders as thick heavy clouds circulated the mountain peaks and ended up leaking downwards to cover most areas with a very thin layer of fog. But while looking dull, the growing trees were a healthy shade of green and were taller than any of the trees Naruto and Kizz had ever seen. The sun would shine perfectly on the country, making the gray appearance almost shine as it reflected the light onto the large bark structures, making it almost peaceful. It didn't need flowers or an abundant amount of color, it's what it worked with and its simplicity that was awe-striking. Naruto again looked down at the map in his hands with heavy annoyance. Tucked beneath his thumb and index finger was the note the masked man had given to him all those months ago, back when he first met Kizz. The note was directions once they got into Lightning Country to guide them to their destination. Naruto had spent many days and nights trying to locate the destination on the map, but he didn't have any luck. The note was vague, it gave him almost no clear answer or even indicated where to go. Apparently they were looking for a secret cave hidden in one of the mountains just before entering Kumogakure. The problem was the masked man never said which mountain it was, but only said it was in the east side of the country. Naruto had already crossed out several locations that he and Kizz had gone to that ended up leading nowhere. And the base must be incredibly well hidden. He hadn't caught a single glance at anything that looked suspicious or looked even remotely like a secret base, and it was really starting to piss Naruto off. If this was so hard to find and would take so long, why couldn't that masked man just take them himself? Naruto doubted they were busy and just did this as some kind of sick joke, and when Naruto found them he would make sure to give them a piece of his mind. Naruto breathed a tired sigh as he rubbed his eyes, trying to wipe the sleep away as an equal, or even more tired Kizz walked next to him. She was beginning to stumble around as her feet dragged on the ground beneath them with her eyes fully closed. She merely mumbled in Naruto's direction whenever he asked her a question and nodded, her sleep-deprived mind not even trying to register what he was saying. Naruto chuckled before stepping in front of her. She bumped into him in surprise until she climbed up onto his back almost robotically and rested her head on his shoulder. Her breathing evened out instantly as her arms went limp as they hung off his shoulders, having passed out instantly the second her head made contact with his shoulder. Naruto couldn't help but smile as he adjusted her on his back and continued their walk into the only area left for him to check for the night. This particular mountain was especially close to the village's entrance, and Naruto was amazed that no Kumo shinobi had come up to him to ask what he was up to. Aisabu had also informed the blonde to refrain from using his chakra, since they were close enough to the village for it to be picked up and would give away their location instantly. Also, Aisabu and Naruto were aware that Kumo was currently housing two Jinchuriki, the Nibi and the Hachibi. So it's best to avoid him at all costs, even though Aisabu wouldn't have minded seeing his brother and sister again. The Nibi and Aisabu were pretty close in the demonic family and always used to the ones who would tease and make fun of the Hachibi and Kyubi. Good times really. Naruto ignored the Sanbi as he finally got to what he was looking for. It was the tallest mountain Naruto had ever seen before. He couldn't even see the top of it as thick clouds obscured his vision, making it almost impossible to see where the mountain actually stopped. Naruto raised an eyebrow as a small little cabin situated itself just to the left of the mountain. Large-size oak trees surrounded the house and lined the rocky structure, and Naruto marveled in the beauty. After picking up Kiss's dropping head on his shoulder, he took a few quiet steps towards the cabin. Even outside he could sense a singular chakra signature. It didn't feel strong, or very big for that matter. Almost like a civilian who trained for about a month with chakra. A bright yellow light shined through the cabin's windows and twinkled onto the patches of grass beneath his feet. Once he got to the front door, a pleasant aroma of food graced his nostrils and he had to forcefully stop himself from drooling. It has been a while since he enjoyed a nice meal, since he would have been living off the wildlife and cheap restaurant food. So the smell of whatever was getting cooked was almost intoxicating for the young blonde. After finally composing himself, he folded his map and placed it in his pouch and knocked on the door. Several seconds flew by and Naruto could hear someone shuffling around, trying their best not to make as much noise. A muffled soft voice reached his ears as it told Naruto it would be just another minute. Naruto waited patiently outside the door, taking small glances in Kiss's direction to make sure she was okay before a soft clicking echoed out. Naruto turned his attention to the door as it slowly opened up. Naruto was greeted with a comfortable smile from a somewhat short gentleman as warm chestnut eyes looked down at him. "Oh, hello young man, did you need something?" Naruto was surprised by this person's tone of voice. It was soothing, flowing past his lips peacefully as it held an air of relaxation. The man's eyes glanced between Naruto and keys on his shoulder and his eyes immediately flashed with worry. Naruto ignored the look and smiled back. The man looked very young. He looked no older than 20 as his shaggy red hair was falling into his eye as it stuck out in many directions. It looked like he had just showered and refused to comb and let it just dry natural. His eyes reminded Naruto of Shisui for a moment, both sharing a vast amount of warmth that seemed to calm Naruto down significantly. "No, I was just looking for a place to stay for the night. Me and my younger sister here have been homeless for a few years now," Naruto said, the man's eyes with concern, and gestured Naruto inside. Naruto thanked the man as he stepped inside the warm wooden house. Lightning Country had always gotten almost unbearably cold during the night, so it was a nice change of atmosphere for the two kids. Well, Naruto didn't care since his blood jutsu always kept him warm, but he was sure Keys had appreciated it, since she was currently wrapped up in his jacket. Taking a look around, the cabin was much larger than it appeared from the outside. The living room was not so small, it was large enough to fit a decent-sized dining table with a connecting kitchen. A couch laid smack in the center of the room, facing an old and run-down fireplace that hadn't looked like it was touched in years. The redhead walked over to the couch and flicked up a lamp in the corner. With a soft click, light illuminated the small couch as he grabbed a few pillows and placed them at the end, once again gesturing Naruto forward. Naruto happily placed Keys down on the couch with some trouble. She refused to let go of his shoulder, and it actually brought a laugh to the stranger's face. After finally breaking free of Kiss's grasp, she pouted in her sleep before cuddling closer into the pillows, humming to herself with content. "She looks exhausted. Have you been traveling long?" the man asked as he walked around the couch and back into the small kitchen. Naruto subconsciously licked his lips as he took a peek at what the man was currently mixing up in the kitchen. The smell of fresh noodles and broth floated in the air as the man mixed the contraption together. The man glanced back, giving Naruto a smile once again, breaking Naruto out of his stupor. Naruto smiled sheepishly, rubbing the back of his head as the man offered for Naruto to sit. Naruto did so happily, sliding into the slightly uncomfortable wooden chair with ease. "Not too long. Just for a few days, but she hasn't been able to get much sleep." The man hummed in understanding, nodding his head as he opened the cupboard and grabbing 3 sets of bowls and placing them on his countertop. "I see, I'm glad I could help out then. I don't get much visitors here. Hungry?" he asked, looking back at Naruto. No, I don't want to intrude more than I." "Nonsense. You look like you could use a nice hot meal." His chestnut eyes shined playfully as he placed a steaming bowl of soup in front of Naruto. The blonde fought back, drooling again as he watched the smoke emitting from the scorching hot food as the noodles glowed beautifully in the broth. The redhead laughed as he slid a pair of chopsticks his way. Naruto was hesitant at first, but it didn't take very long for him to snap the chopsticks away and start to dig in, thanking the stranger for the meal. The man chuckled and waved his hand in response before he got himself a larger bowl and sat down across from Naruto. They say in a comfortable silence as they ate into the night. Naruto felt like he was in heaven. This was the closest thing he has had to ramen in months. And he was really starting to miss that specific taste, and this was a great substitute for his cravings. After Naruto finished his bowl, he gave a heavy sigh of happiness. Isabu himself felt a smile grace his lips, tasting the phantom food through Naruto. Overall, it was shaping into a good day. The redhead laughed happily as he picked up Naruto's bowl and his own before walking over to the sink. Naruto was quick to offer his assistance but was instantly shut down. Naruto thanked the man again before getting up to go check on Keys, who was still fast asleep on the couch. Looking down at her, Naruto smiled, running his hands through her long brown hair as she smiled in her sleep. Subconsciously leaning into his touch as she snuggled closer to the pillow she was laying on. Naruto felt the stranger walk himself over to the young kids until he stood on the opposite end of the couch. He was drying his hand on a dish towel as he smiled, his eyes once again glowing with warmth. "It's nice to see you care so much for your sister, it's very sweet." Naruto smiled embarrassedly as he scratched the back of his head again. If he was honestly speaking, he would have never thought he would wind up getting so close to Keys. At first he wanted absolutely nothing to do with her, she was just a mission that was in his way for keeping Kurenai safe and finding out who killed Shisui. But now, at the mere thought of losing her, being separated from her tore at his heart. And he couldn't even imagine a world anymore without her being near him. Keys was there for Naruto through a tough time and had no idea how much she had actually helped. Keeping his fingers tangled in her hair, smiling again, and he nodded. "Yeah, she's very special to me. And I assume her magnet release is progressing nicely." Naruto felt his entire body freeze as his blood ran cold. He tried his best to keep his emotions schooled as he snapped his head upwards to stare in the glowing chestnut eyes of the redhead. Naruto fought back a gulp. That was the last thing he was expecting the man to say. He felt the cogs turning in his head. He was getting ready to start channeling his chakra if the man acted on the throat. The man did nothing before taking a seat on the grooves of the couch, reaching up and twirling a stray red bang that fell into his eyes as he side-glanced at Naruto, his expression neutral. Naruto removed his fingers from Kiss's hair as she groaned in displeasure as it echoed in the suddenly tense room. "I'm not sure what you're talking about." "Sure you do." Naruto was slightly off-put at the man's incredibly fast response. The man was still twirling his hair as he smirked in Naruto's direction. Naruto could feel the temperature drop several degrees as he racked his brain to think of an appropriate response. Seconds passed and they felt like hours as the man stared at Naruto with amusement. "Please Naruto-kun, I am not a fool. Did you like dinner? How do you know my name?" Naruto's heart pounded in his chest with anxiety. He almost took a step back as his brain screamed at him to leave. His body felt like it was in turmoil as his name left the man's lips. "Did you like dinner?" he asked again, standing up straight as he flung his rag over his shoulder. His smirk never left his face as he pushed his hair back, but it didn't help as it just fell right back down. His voice was still soft and it held genuine curiosity, confusing Naruto greatly. Naruto took a defensive stance in front of Keys, ready to wake her as soon as the man made the first move. "I did. Wonderful. Itsumi-kun said you were a ramen fan. Sadly, I didn't have all of the ingredients to make authentic ramen," the man said, smiling kindly at Naruto as the tension in the room evaporated instantly. Naruto blinked in surprise as the man turned his back to him and walked back into the kitchen. "Ha. Itsumi. Oh, my apologies Naruto-kun for not telling you," the man said sheepishly, twirling his strand of hair again as he laughed to himself. He threw the dirty towel onto the counter before taking his previous seat back at the table. Leaning his head on his open palm, he smiled, pointing at the seat across from him. Naruto didn't move from his standing position as he stared at the red head, making him frown. He retracted his hand and softly drummed his fingers on the wooden table. "I guess you would know Itsumi-kun as the masked man. The one who gave you this mission." Naruto and Isabu both felt their eyes widen in shock. Naruto's body tensed considerably again. This was certainly not what he was expecting his night to go. He was expecting to see if the house had anything special for him to take and possibly get away with some goods. The man seemed weak and he could barely sense any chakra within the man, but if he knew that masked man Itsumi, then he had to at least be strong. The man smirked again. He was having a fun time watching Naruto's eyes flash through so many emotions. Now please, care to sit down? Naruto slowly nodded as he carefully took the opposing seat yet again. The seat still warmed up from previously as the redhead traced his finger along a chip in the table, letting his fingernail scrape against the table. It took you too much longer to get here. We were expecting you both in a month. It's been almost 5. Naruto thought about not answering the man. The situation was far too strange for him. Not saying he wasn't put into awkward and strange predicaments, but this was completely unexpected. But the man was aware of the now named Itsumi and his mission with keys. Itsumi had never spoken that he would meet another person in his group, if this redhead was even a part of. Naruto guessed that he was, though. They seemed to be on friendly terms and had been expecting Naruto all this time. So Naruto swallowed his nervousness and nodded. Yes, well, we had done some training along the way, along with sightseeing, he answered back. The man hummed again as he glanced back over to the sleeping girl, noticing a bright gold stuffed rabbit she was holding close to her chest with a small content smile on her face. He nodded his head in understanding, accepting his answer. Turning his attention back to Naruto, he smiled before offering his hand forward for a handshake. Naruto stared at it quizzically. Where are my manners? My name is Sasori and I'm the person you were supposed to drop Keys-chan off to. Naruto's heart felt like his heart had dropped several stories in his chest. He put on a fake smile as he took the now dubbed Sasori's hand in a firm shake. Isabu stayed silent as he sensed the blonde's obvious discomfort at the situation. But the demon himself would be lying if he said he wasn't sharing the same thoughts with Naruto. Sasori grinned. He didn't mind having to wait extra time for the two of them. In fact, he actually enjoyed the peace and quiet of the cabin. It was remotely out of anyone's way barely anybody had even come to visit him. Itsumi seemed to talk very highly of Naruto and Sasori was excited to see the young man. Well, glad you meet you, Sasori-san. The feeling is quite mutual, Naruto-kun. Not let's wake little Keys-chan, shall we? I'm sure you both would like to hear what exactly you came here for. Naruto nodded after a moment's hesitation before he went to go wake up the sleeping Keys as Sasori stayed in his seat patiently. Kiss's eyes fluttered open as she wiped the sleep from her eyes. After fully waking up, she tensed as he didn't recognize where she was. She looked at Naruto and instantly calmed down, but was slightly confused at the expressionless look in his eyes. After about 20 minutes until Keys was fully awake and she finished her soup, which sadly was warm and not hot, but she didn't mind as she gobbled the food up happily. After she was finished eating, she sat on the chair directly next to Naruto. She looked up at Sasori apprehensively as she scooted closer to Naruto. The blonde boy smiled as he rubbed her hair affectionately. Sasori watched the interaction with a small glint of his eyes as Keys melted under his touch. Sasori waited as both the kids' eyes turned back to him and he smiled warmly at Keys. Hello Keys-chan, my name is Sasori, I'm the person that you and Naruto-kun were supposed to meet. Hello Sasori-san, she said timidly, sinking closer to Naruto. Well, now to tell you both about the mission. You see, I am already aware of Kiss's magnet release, which is the reason you both are here. You see, I am the world's strongest puppet master, and I have been searching for a certain individual to pass my teachings along to. And I think you are exactly what I've been looking for. Both Naruto and Keys looked up at Sasori in surprise. Keys actually felt her chest tighten at the idea of training in the puppet arts. She had been interested in that ever since she had controlled a puppet about a year ago. Sasori's eyes glinted again in excitement. If what Itsumi said about Keys was true, then he was going to be one happy man. That is why I wanted to meet you and make you my apprentice. Keys digested its words as she looked up at Naruto, slightly worried as his eyes remained void, but he did smile at her. The room was quiet as Naruto reached out and pinched her cheeks slightly. Keys yelped in surprise and glared at Naruto. Naruto laughed. Why are you looking at me, Keys? This is what we came all this way for. Naruto said. Sasori nodded his head before resting in it his open palm. still tracing his hand over the wooden table. He smirked as Keys watched in amazement as a thin blue-colored chakra string formed from his fingertip and made its way over one of the closed doors next to the couch she was previously laying in. Keys felt her eyes start to sparkle as the chakra spring opened the door and escaped into the room. She couldn't tell what was happening and almost laughed in joy as a small puppet that the chakra string now connived to ran out of the room. The puppet was very small, it was just over 2 feet tall and had brightly colored pink hair with a matching set of eyes. It wore a dark black gown as its arm waved at Keys. Keys squealed as she jumped from her seat and ran to the puppet. Naruto tried to stop her from doing so, but Sasori was quick to intervene. He pushed his free hand forward, stopping Naruto. Naruto looked back at Sasori and almost glared. Sasori kept his face blank and was about to speak until the sound of Keys laughing broke the two out of their thoughts. Naruto felt his eyes soften as she watched Keys laugh as the puppet did a little spin. His eyes were practically shining with happiness and Naruto's heart soared with warmth. He was oblivious to Sasori's watchful eye and just smiled at Keys. Now Keys-chan, if you would like I could train you to be the world's best puppeteer in the world. But it is your choice and if you would like to decline then you may, I will not force you. Keys blinked as she hugged the tiny puppet in her arms. She looked between the calm chestnut eyes of Sasori and the almost sad blue of Naruto. She felt her heart rate speed up in her tiny chest as she looked at the boy who had saved her from her inner demons. The room fell silent as she pondered Sasori's words, both parties waiting almost expectantly for her answer, and she could almost sense Naruto's fear as she did so. He tried to hide it from her but she could see it in his eyes. She looked back at Sasori, giggling slightly as the redhead twitched his finger making the little boy puppet salute to her. I will accept, but only if Naru gets to stay. Keys said, making Naruto raise his eyebrows in shock. Sasori stayed completely normal. Keys felt Naruto's questions gaze on her and blushed. She played with the hem of her shirt awkwardly before speaking again. I mean I know Naru was just supposed to drop me off but I don't want him to leave me. Sir I will only stay if he gets TT too. She yelled, burying her head deep into her shirt in a feeble attempt to cover up her red face. Naruto felt incredibly glad to hear Kiss's words. He smiled the biggest smile ever as he looked at the embarrassed girl in front of him. Sasori merely smirked at the girl's display of confidence. From what Itsumi had told him, Keys was an introvert and barely ever spoke unless it was necessary. Sasori almost wanted to laugh as he saw the pure bliss that had overtaken the previously sad blonde. It was adorable. Of course he can stay. Both kids looked at him in shock and Sasori almost rolled his eyes. Kids could be so naive sometimes. I am perfectly aware of Naruto's hidden abilities. Itsumi-kun and Yuno-kun had informed me ages ago. Do you really think I would just throw Naruto-kun away after this? If possible, Kiss's face has gotten even more red and Naruto had the audacity to blush. He stayed silent as he looked away from Sasori, feeling a sad sense of guilt at the man's words. Naruto was 100% expecting Keys to get up and leave him like almost everybody else had in his life. He was terrified Keys was going to do the same, and he was dreading the moment after Sasori had asked the question. He was already preparing to leave and not look back as soon as she said yes. But she had asked him to stay. He felt like crying, and he was damn close to it too. It took everything in his power to stop himself from running and hugging the tiny girl in his arms. Sasori this time rolled his eyes as he got out of his seat. His chair scraping against the floor letting the uncomfortable screeching sound echo out into the closed-off room. He drew the attention of the two kids asking them to follow him. They both did so and Keys had walked up to Naruto, scooting closer to him as she was almost fully against his legs as they walked. She was still thoroughly embarrassed and refused to look up at him but he didn't mind. He was just glad to be here and stay by her side. They watched with interest as Sasori then opened his fridge. Keys shuddered slightly as the cold air washed over her and he started taking everything out of the machine. After the fridge was completely emptied out, he placed his hand inside the fridge, not even wincing from the cool air. He channeled his chakra as the inside of the fridge suddenly caved in, revealing a dark hidden pathway. Sasori chuckled at the stupefied expressions of Naruto and Keys, gesturing to the hole with the widest grin they had ever seen. His chestnut eyes seemed to glow in the dark as he stared at him. He looked excited, barely able to contain himself anymore. Now, This is when the real training begins. Walking through the fridge was almost like walking into a different dimension for Naruto and Keys. After entering, they were forced to walk down a pitch-black hallway for about 20 minutes. There was absolutely no light and the hallway got tighter and tighter the longer they continued on. Sasori was quiet for the whole journey as Keys kept herself clung to Naruto's leg. It was hard to see and she kept losing her footing and tripping until Naruto decided to carry her piggyback style on his back. She was happy to agree and practically jumped on top of him in excitement. Once they reached the ending, Sasori put his hand on a smooth piece of stone on the wall and channeled his chakra like he had previously. After a moment, the rock started to glow a light yellow as a seal array became visible in the center before the rock started to turn itself, revealing a large open-spaced room as a bright light shone through, forcing Naruto and Keys to shield their eyes from the rays. Sasori chuckled slightly, pushing the rock open a few more inches to allow himself to get by before helping Naruto and Keys. Naruto accepted his help and when he stepped foot inside he looked around the room in amazement. He set Keys back down to the floor as he walked around. The room was large, it was roughly the size of 2 training grounds put together and looked tall enough to even hold a Bayu comfortable. He heard Keys squeal in delight as he looked over to see her bouncing in place as a large waterfall cascaded down from the roof and pulled itself into its own man-made crevasse. Naruto smiled as she then made her way over to the far end of the room with Sasori right behind her. They then broke out into a loud animated conversation, well, mainly Keys, but Sasori was trying his best to keep up with her. Naruto turned his attention back to the other end of the room. A large bay window was placed in the wall and looked out into the vast land of Lightning Country. Talking a few steps closer, he gently placed his hands on the glass and took a peek downwards, suppressing a shudder from the distance. They were extremely high up in the mountain that Naruto had seen before entering the cabin. He didn't remember seeing windows in the mountain, but it could have been the clouds masking its presence. His eyes then shifted back out into the dull forests. He could just barely see the edge of the great village of Kumogakure. He could easily make out the giant tower near the end of his line of sight that most likely was the cage tower. Turning back around, he looked over to Keys, who was holding a severed puppet arm with a look of pure astonishment on her face. Naruto saw Sasori laugh slightly before plucking it from her arms and placing it back down on a large workbench they were standing in front of. Naruto watched the scene in front of him with a smile. Not even 6 months ago would he ever have envisioned his life taking such a much-needed curveball. He was finally feeling like he was getting stronger, like he was finally becoming the man that Shisui would be proud of. He had to leave Konoha, it was holding him back from becoming what he was supposed to be. Naruto did miss some of his friends, he couldn't even imagine what his team was saying, and he hadn't even spoken to Sasuke or Shikamaru in quite a while and regretted that he at least didn't write a note for them. But most of all, he missed Kurenai. Thinking back on the raven-haired beauty, he was eternally grateful for what she had done for him, and he would never forget it for as long as he lived. She was like the smiling angel that reached out and draped him whenever he was falling. And every time he looked at her, he was reminded of a time where he was genuinely happy. With Shisui training him and Kurenai looking out for him in the forest, it was almost like he reverted back into that state when he was near her. Keys had asked about Kurenai before and he didn't even know where to begin to describe her, so many things came to mind and he couldn't just narrow it down to a singular thought. It was almost as if he was in. What you thinking about? Naruto jumped in surprise as Sasori's calm voice broke him out of his thoughts. The redhead merely smiled down at the blonde as he stood peacefully next to Naruto, hands in his pockets as he looked out the large window in front of him. Naruto felt his cheeks heat up a bit and turned his body until he was staring out the window with Sasori, hoping the darkening sky was enough to hide his face from even more embarrassment. Just thinking about someone. Ah, Kurenai-san correct. Naruto flinched a bit but didn't answer. Instead he decided to stay silent as he looked further away from Sasori. The redhead lost his smile as he glanced over at Naruto. He reached up to once again play with a singular strand of hair that was out of place, leaning his body slightly against the wall next to him. His voice was soft as he spoke, and Naruto appreciated it. Yes, Itsumi-kun had told me what he said to you back then. Personally, I think there was a much better way to handle it. I would have just offered to take Kurenai-san with us, Sasori said with a chuckle, making Naruto snap his head over to the redhead. Naruto buried his cerulean blue orbs into Sasori as he scoffed. Are you saying he wouldn't have killed her? He said angrily, his fists tightening. No, he would have. Itsumi-kun may seem friendly, and very much is, but he isn't fond when people disobey him. I think you made the right decision since the odds were stacked so heavily against you. I see, Naruto said, turning to look at the taller man. Sasori raised an eyebrow at Naruto's serious expression but stayed silent as he waited patiently. It looked like he had more to say. Sasori-san, Itsumi said once I got here then I would be told who killed Shisui-nisan. Naruto said, not even blinking as his eyes stayed locked onto Sasori's own chestnut. He pursed his lips as he went silent. The only sound in the room was the echoing of Kiss's giggles as she played with all the severed puppet parts. Sasori after a few minutes looked away from Naruto, hands deep in his pants pockets as he gazed out into the night. I'm sorry Naruto-kun but I do not know. Yuno-kun is the only one in our group who knows that information. What? Naruto yelled loudly before reaching out, gripping Sasori by his collar and pulling the redhead down to his level. Sasori didn't even resist as Naruto's now activated Sharingan spun wildly in his socket. Sasori looked back at the famous Dujutsu, not a single shred of surprise or fear as he stared back and Naruto who only gripped on tighter. The blonde scowled loudly, almost like a growl forced its way out of his throat. Are you telling me I traveled all this way, all these months and you can't even tell me what you guys promised? Sasori kept his face blank as several gobs of spit landed on his face from Naruto's scream. A tiny grin did leak its way onto his lips and for a split second his eyes shined with a small sense of amusement. I never said that. Yuno-kun was here waiting for you both 2 months ago. He got tired of waiting and left. And please Naruto-kun, how can you be so mad? Because of this you finally have a sister again. Naruto's grip loosed significantly around the redhead's collar, throwing the fabric back into place. Sasori couldn't stop his grin from growing as he saw the boy's face take on a pink hue. Naruto scowled, crossing his arms over his chest with irritation as he noticed the concerned gaze of Kise looking at him from across the room. Naruto's face softened considerably at the young girl, his anger dissipating with each passing second. Taking in a deep breath he felt his body calm itself. He was still feeling the aftershock of Isabu's chakra and he was feeling a little jumpy. It was annoying that Sasori couldn't tell him who killed Shisui. It was part of the reason he had even dedicated himself to take this mission. But if what Sasori said was true then it was his fault for taking so long to get here. The trip itself should have taken a month and they somehow managed to take 5 times as long to get here. It was hard to stay on schedule with Kise after all. She wanted to see all of the landmarks and enjoy her time as they traveled through place to place and he just couldn't find it in himself to say no to her. Not that he wanted to. Hell, most days he often found himself forgetting that he even had a mission to do in the first place. The time with Kise just felt like a vacation with his younger sister. When will this Yuno guy return? Sasori hummed as he smoothed out his wrinkled shirt, hand reaching up to play with his sanguine hair with a thoughtful expression. Who knows? He's a busy guy, maybe in the next few months. Naruto blanched at that. Were any of these people in this group reliable? As far as Naruto saw, this wasn't the case. He couldn't wrap his head around them at all no matter how hard he tried, and he really did try. They were all too much of an enigma for him. They definitely liked their secrecy since he knew nothing about any of them except the group names, and 3 of their members' names. Neither pegged to be of much use when no one else seemed even aware these people even existed. But waiting a few more months couldn't hurt. After all, Sasori had agreed to even train Naruto with Kise and he was looking forward to it. He still had a lot to learn and Sasori seemed like a very capable shinobi. Hell, he called himself the world's best puppet user. That must hold some weight, right? Thinking about training, a question had popped up in his mind, something that had been nagging at him every time he activated his Sharingan. And for the life of him he just couldn't figure it out and Isabu deemed to be little to no help in figuring out why. Sasori-san. What is it Naruto-kun? Do you know anything about the Sharingan? Sasori raised an eyebrow as he looked back over into the blonde's multicolored eyes. He had been anticipating this question, more so than any questions revolving around Shisui. Just the mere image of helping Naruto along with the Dujutsu sent a shiver of excitement down his spine. He had never worked with the Sharingan before, but of course he knew most, if not all the secrets of the Dujutsu. Of course he had been in Konoha before, and perhaps had even snuck into the Uchiha shrine with a certain individual. Suppressing the urge to shudder with barely contained glee, Sasori just shrugged his shoulders in response. It wouldn't be fun to just outright say what he knew about the dojutsu, and who knows what Naruto was even going to ask. He had a pretty good idea since the owner of the Sharingan was the infamous Shisui Uchiha. I might know a little, how come? Well, you see, it happened while I was fighting Narumi in Yukigaku. Naruto said, looking into the window and peering into his reflection staring back at him. He paused, trying to gather his jumble of thoughts together before continuing. I remember doing something, like using a jutsu that I didn't know I even knew. I remember bleeding from my eye, then Narumi was knocked down to the ground. Naruto finished, looking at Sasori with a questioning gaze. Sasori this time actually felt his spine chill in excitement. He rarely got excited, so it was a special moment for him. He couldn't stop the glint in his eyes as he recalled other previous Sharingan jutsu. He did slightly wonder why Shisui had left no information about the Sharingan to Naruto. Maybe it was a last-ditch effort to stay loyal to his clan. That wouldn't make much sense since he had willingly given up his Sharingan without a fight. The only logical answer was Shisui wasn't even expecting to give the dojutsu to Naruto, a strong act of rebellion that Sasori could appreciate. Yes, I'm sure I know what happened. Did your Sharingan change shape as well? Yeah, how did why? Come Naruto-kun, follow me. Naruto blinked in surprise at Sasori's tone. Gone was the calm and relaxation, now a deep sense of glee echoed in his words. By the time Naruto had enough time to fully register what Sasori had said, he was already halfway across the large training ground. Naruto called out in surprise before jogging to catch up to Sasori. Kise was told to follow as well, and she placed down a puppet she was mindlessly assembling as she ran over to Naruto and attached herself to his leg. Naruto welcomed the affection and paid it no mind as the two of them followed Sasori into one of the many back rooms this cave was housing. Sasori flicked on the light as Naruto felt his body go pale slightly at what he saw. A large white surgery table was smack in the center of the room with several IVs and a cart full of medical equipment. Naruto snapped his head over to Sasori and he paled further when the mysterious glint in his usual calm chestnut eyes burned brighter than the sun. Naruto took a hesitant step back and Kise looked up at him in confusion. She wasn't sure why Naru had reacted that way, after all it just looked like a small table. She instinctively tightened herself around his leg for support. He had done it for her sometimes when she had nightmares and it always worked for her. Maybe it would work with Naru too. It seemed to have the desired effect that Kise wanted and Naruto felt some of her nerves fade away. It couldn't stop all of them however as he gulped loudly, resting his free hand on her head as he stared at Sasori. He had a bad feeling in his stomach and he could hear Isabu telling him to just run away and not deal with this. Sasori didn't even try to ease Naruto's fear as he picked up several scalpels and placed them on the table, grinning widely as he did so. Now Naruto-kun, do not worry. This isn't what it looks like. I am merely going to run some tests on you. You see, I know exactly what you're talking about in regards to your Sharingan, and I just want to make sure I collect all the necessary data that I can. In hopes to understand your Mangekyo Sharingan better. Mangekyo. Sasori's gave a Cheshire smile, his teeth almost glowing radiant in the room as he gestured Naruto closer. He was excited, more so than ever before. Naruto was like a canvas, just waiting to be painted on and sculpted into a fine masterpiece of modern art that the shinobi world has never seen before. Sasori almost trembled in delight at the thought. He had two magnificent specimens in front of him, just waiting for him. That time he couldn't stop the tremble if he even tried. And just like that, one whole year had passed for Naruto and Kise as they trained under Sasori. End of Arc 4. Guard duty not treating you well. Naruto jumped slightly in shock. With a soft yell he fell off the tree branch he was on. He was practicing his blood-style jutsu, trying to form it into a decent-sized ball before the soft echoing voice reached his ears and he lost control of the jutsu. Naruto hit the ground with a soft thud, his jutsu splashing on him, covering the lower half of his face. Naruto felt his cheeks match the sanguine liquid on his face as he looked up into the beautiful red eyes of Kurenai. Naruto felt his cheeks start to flush deeper as Kurenai covered her mouth with her hand, her shoulders trembling as she tried to hold back her giggles. Naruto propelled himself up with his arms and he reached up to scratch the back of his head. Sorry Naruto-kun, I didn't mean to scare you. Kurenai said in between laughs, reaching out, and she grabbed onto one of Naruto's arms and pulled him back to his feet. Naruto dusted off his dirty pants until they were clean. Naruto pulled his hand upwards. Using his fingers he channeled his chakra, removing the blood off from his face as he laughed awkwardly. No, you didn't scare me, just caught me off guard is all. He said, embarrassed, letting the blood fall onto the floor as Kurenai laughed again. Kurenai looked down at the boy and her eyes twinkled with a strong sense of mirth. She adjusted her bandage battle dress, wrapping it over her behind, and took a seat onto the dirty forest floor. Kurenai smiled up at Naruto as she patted the ground next to her. Naruto felt his cheeks heat up further as he took the offered seat directly next to her. They sat in silence for a few minutes as they looked out into the dark forest of Fire Country. Both Genin and Junin were basking in the moonlight as it shined down on them. The beautiful white bats of light shone through the opening of leaves and drawing the two with a comfortable feeling of peace. Naruto titled his head to look at the Junin next to him. She was looking up to the sky. Her expression was calm as she gazed out into the moon. Her knees were up to her chest with her arms wrapped around comfortable. Her head rested in the center of her arms with her eyes closed shut, letting her shoulders slump down. She looked absolutely peaceful. Naruto felt like he was being hypnotized at the mere sight of her. His heart felt like it was going to explode out of his chest at any moment just from the mere sight of her. Naruto's breath hitched as her eyes fluttered open, blinking several times to adjust to the lack of light and look over into his direction. Her ruby-red eyes reflected the serene moonlight flawlessly as it bounced off of them. The corner of her lips curved upwards into a small smile as she scooted a little closer, leaning downwards, making Naruto hesitantly scoot his head further away. You know it's rude to stare at a lady, Naruto-kun. Naruto's face, if possible, exploded into the deepest shade of red either of them had ever seen as he snapped his head away from her. Naruto felt his shoulders slumped down embarrassedly as Kurenai softly laughed next to him. Sorry, I didn't mean to. It's alright Naruto-kun, I was just teasing you. She said, bumping her shoulder into his playfully as she smiled. Naruto smiled back but still refused to look up into her eyes. Kurenai giggled again but stayed in her position with their shoulders touching against one another. A comfortable silence washed over them as they sat together looking out into the wilderness. Sitting next to Kurenai was pleasant and he could feel his body becoming less and less tense the longer they were near each other. Periodically Kurenai would run her hands through her messy black hair and Naruto would have a hard time not noticing her do it. Whenever she did, a small scent of vanilla and strawberry would waft his way over to him, making him shudder slightly. If she had noticed, she didn't say anything. Instead she continued to do so until they somehow ended up closer than ever. Kurenai's legs had unspooled and now laid dangerously close to the blonde. Forgetting how to breathe again as her head slightly fell to her side from drowsiness as it landed atop of his. Feeling anxious, Naruto shifted a little but didn't pull away from Kurenai. He snuck a glance in her direction and almost pulled back in surprise when she was staring at him. Naruto smiled awkwardly, and she returned the gesture. Maybe you should go and get some sleep, Kurenai-san. Narumi is getting up soon to take over my shift. Kurenai adamantly shook her head, her hair swinging with her as an even stronger scent of strawberries reached Naruto's nose. I couldn't sleep, that's why I came to give you company. So I'll stay till your shift is over. Naruto felt his heart flutter as she subconsciously snuggled her head further into his head. Naruto this time felt his whole body go red. Whatever Kurenai was doing was killing him. And he actually thought he would have a heart attack at any moment. He had never felt this feeling before, not even with Shisui, hell even around Shizuka or Anko. He couldn't pinpoint the exact feeling but he knew he didn't mind it. He didn't respond but he did force his eyes away from her. He missed the frown Kurenai had given him as her gaze stayed on him. Hey Naruto-kun, is Narumi bothering you? If she is, we can return to Konoha and have our team shifted around to get her removed. Kurenai said honestly. Even if Naruto was good at hiding his growing annoyance at Narumi during the mission, she would tell by the way his eyes shifted around that she was getting on his nerves. And she was perfectly prepared to return to take them all back to the village if it meant making Naruto's life a little less stressful. Naruto felt touched by the concern in her words. Her tone was soft and he looked at her with a smile as he shook his head. No, This is a good way to get over anything, right? And yes, she's annoying, so damn annoying, but it's just more of a reminder than I'm over all of them. Kurenai blinked in surprise at the sheer amount of confidence in his voice. He didn't waver and she felt herself smiling along with him, her features softening as she locked eyes with him. Well, if you say so, Naruto-kun. But if it becomes too much, then come and tell me, okay? I have no problem going back. Thank you, Kurenai-san, but really it's alright. And just let her do it, maybe once she gets it out of her system she'll calm down. Naruto said, chuckling to himself at the irony. His laughter died down as he felt Kurenai remove her head from his. Naruto wanted to pout from the lack of warmth as he watched as Kurenai entered her previous position, eyes downcast as she put some distance between them. Naruto frowned, he didn't think what he said would have upset her that much, or at all. He didn't know if he should reach out and ask what was wrong, or just stay silent. He had never been one for comfort and wasn't really taught how to do it. After a few seconds of awkward silence for Naruto, he hesitantly scooted across the dirt, scratching the back of his head. Hey Kurenai-san, are you okay? Kurenai looked back at him and almost smiled at his nervous gesture. The smile never escaped, and instead a frown took its place. Her goal was to come out here and tell him what had been on her mind for the past few weeks, but she just didn't know how. Her thoughts were a mess and she was having trouble sorting through them all as his sapphire blue eyes looked at her with so much worry it was shocking. Her arms tightened around her legs as she brought them closer to her body. I guess, I wanted to apologize to you, Naruto-kun. Huh, why? Naruto asked, confused, his head tilting to the side in question. Kurenai nodded her head sadly. Yes, I should have been there for you when Shisui-san died. She said, clenching her fists. Naruto widened his eyes at her in shock, he was not expecting that. Kurenai looked away ashamed at herself. I know I was training to be a Junin, and once I passed I was sent on a 2-year-long mission, but when I got back I should have been there for you. I heard about the Uchiha massacre and I didn't look up on you. And you just shared everything about you to me, and I just don't deserve that level of trust from you when I couldn't even be there for you. She finished in a rush, her heart beating shamefully in her chest. She hoped Naruto could feel her guilt. Because she really was guilty, she regretted it more than anything. She felt like she didn't deserve it, she was no better than his family, then why did she get treated differently? Kurenai felt a soft hand touch hers and she looked up to see Naruto's hand encircle hers, her arms loosened up as she looked at the soft blue eyes looking at her. Naruto felt incredibly embarrassed as he did the simple action, his heart was on fire and he forced the deep blush down to his neck so she couldn't see it. Naruto smiled warmly, making Kurenai even more confused. I think you do, so what if you were busy? At least you were busy, my parents weren't. And the time you spent with me since I got back, and all those years ago was more than I could have asked for. I was happy around you, and you had no obligation to anyway. I was just somebody random you met one day, you're not the one who should feel guilty, he said, surprising even himself as the words flowed naturally out of him. He felt Kurenai's hand tighten in his and he returned it with a gentle squeeze of his own. The honesty reflecting in his eyes was enough to make the Junin blush slightly as Naruto's own smile grew wider. She felt her nerves and shame melt away the longer Naruto held her hand within his. She felt her own smile growing as she locked her eyes with his. Blue met red with such a display of open vulnerability and affection. I'll make sure you aren't alone anymore, Naruto-kun. Naruto-kun, are you even listening to me? Naruto snapped his head upwards, eyes blinking in surprise as he looked at Sasori. Sasori's eyes glowed with annoyance as he scowled, crossing his arms over his chest as soon as he finished zipping up his jacket. Naruto looked sheepish as he forced his eyes away from Sasori, scratching the back of his head with a light blush on his face. Sasori merely rolled his eyes at the blonde. Sorry Sasori-sensei, I kinda spaced out there. Yes, I am aware. Anyway, I'm stepping out for a bit. Watch over the place while I'm gone. Naruto raised an eyebrow at Sasori. Naruto just nodded and responded with a will do, and just like that Sasori was gone. Naruto had learned that over the year Sasori would sometimes leave for a day or two saying he had some business to take care, and Naruto now knew better than to ask where he was going. Sasori would never answer the question and would then vanish, and sometimes hit them with a "None of your business." Naruto was quick to not ask again after those words reached him. Naruto looked down at what he was previously doing. He was seated in a classroom that resembled the shinobi academy that he used to attend, but it was much smaller. Sasori, when he wasn't training them on ninjutsu or any of the more advanced shinobi arts, he liked to use the classroom for more teachings, like jutsu making and principles of certain shinobi clans and powers. Naruto always had to suppress a groan whenever Sasori had dragged him and Keys in this room. It reminded him of his academy days and he never liked looking back on those memories. Keys never complained. In fact, she was always elated when Sasori-sensei would teach them here. Since she had never gone to a school before, or a shinobi academy, so all of this was new to her and was exciting. The only thing Naruto looked forward to during his time in this room was jutsu making. The three of them would usually talk for hours and try to formulate possibilities and ways to create new and powerful jutsu. It was what you thought the shinobi academy was going to be like when you were a kid, and for Naruto, it was damn cool. But over the past year since Naruto and Keys had joined Sasori, things were finally beginning to calm down for the blonde boy. Keys was progressing at a very fast rate. She already learned how to use chakra strings with both her hands, and added a few earth and wind jutsus into her limited arsenal. Sasori had bragged relentlessly the day he managed to get Keys to control a small puppet with just the use of her magnet release. It didn't have the best control and would usually fall to the ground due to Kiss's average grasp on her bloodline, but it was a foot in the right direction and she was growing each and every day. Naruto was proud of her. She had changed drastically since the first time they had met and he couldn't be happier. They had spent almost every day together, and even on days off when Sasori would leave they would spend them either sparring or just hanging out with one another. And it was great. Sasori had a strict training regime for each of them, and they often trained in two different places since it was dangerous to train near each other. Sasori had helped improve in the area he had been lacking in most, his taijutsu. He was nowhere near the level he wanted to be, but he was much better than he was last year. His speed had increased dramatically ever since Sasori had gone and replaced his old training weights with weight seals that he put on the bodies to improve their speed and usefulness. His blood jutsu was almost second-hand nature to him by now. He had enough control over the art that he didn't have to think about it anymore. His chakra control was a big factor in his control and was easy enough to manipulate. He had spent days and days training until the sun would rise the next morning to fine-tune his chakra control. He never knew how important it was until jutsu starting to implode on him from his lack of understanding on control. Sasori made sure to beat the information into him, and ever since then, his chakra control was almost perfect. With Isabu, the two of them had trouble getting to the second chakra tail together. After entering the first tail, Naruto felt no pain when he did so. He now only felt pure power and warmness spread through his body. But nothing compared to the pain he felt from entering the second tail. At the memory, Naruto winced in pain, instinctively reaching up and rubbing his bandaged arm. The heat and malice was so strong that the skin on his body would sometimes feel like it would melt away, and sometimes it did. Keys was horrified that the first time she did it and practically forced Naruto to stop his training with the demon's chakra altogether until he was fully healed and in perfect condition to try again. But even after the year they couldn't get the tail to form, and at this point Naruto felt like he would end up dying before he did manage to. Sasori tried to help in any way he could, but he didn't know how the inner workings of Jinchuriki worked. Almost everyone's seals were different and operated in a different way, and he was nowhere close to a seal master to decipher the seal Yuno had put on Naruto. And he wasn't so sure he could understand the feeling of skin peeling off the body, so he left the Bayou training solely for Naruto and just supervised so things wouldn't get out of hand. But Isabu would always pull back fast enough so Naruto never had lost control, something the blonde was incredibly thankful for. His Sharingan had been the biggest change, ever since the terrifying discovery that Sasori was going to basically do a doctor's check-up on him, but even Naruto had to admit that the results were more than amazing. Sasori had explained in depth on what the Mangekyo Sharingan was. It was one part of the final evolution that the Sharingan underwent, and it could only be obtained by killing the person closest to you, or so much mental and physical stress that the Dujutsu mutated normally. But that was rare. Most Uchiha who gained the powerful Mangekyo had slayed someone closest to them. But each Mangekyo Sharingan had come attached with its own unique abilities, two to be exact. Each unique ability was tailored to its owner, and when implanted into someone else's eyes they should retain the same abilities of the original owner of the Dujutsu. But that wasn't the case with Naruto. Sasori had gone over the date over 100 times, and theorized that when Yuno had sealed the Sanbi and implanted the Sharingan simultaneously that he actually mutated Naruto's DNA around the Dojutsu. Which is why he was able to activate and deactivate the bloodline at will, unlike Kakashi Hatake who had to keep it covered up to keep it deactivated. So Naruto didn't hold any of the traits that Shisui had, and instead was given 2 unique ones, and Sasori was ecstatic. They had worked long and hard for over 6 months but were finally able to pin down the exact technique Naruto had used against Narumi, and to say Naruto was surprised was an understatement. He was absolutely stunned. They both have named the unique Mangekyo ability, misdirection. It was the ability to shift one's line of sight for a few seconds to allow Naruto to either escape, or get in close enough to deal the finishing blow. And they could not fight back against the technique. For how long Sasori had tried it was impossible to not look at what Naruto wanted you to look at, he just couldn't tear his eyes away. The only thing you could do is try and sense Naruto's chakra signature but you had to be incredibly fast to do so, and most of the time even faster than Naruto himself, and since his control over the Shunshin was nearing insane levels it was not an easy feat. But that wasn't saying the jutsu didn't come with an Achilles heel. The jutsu had a time limit. Naruto and Sasori had both figured out that the misdirection only lasted for about 5 seconds maximum, and had at least a 5-minute cooldown. It wasn't the worst drawback, but the amount of chakra Naruto had to admit was a lot and would sometimes leave him fatigued if he held the jutsu for the full 5 seconds. He was getting better at his control over the ability and was able to hold it for 3 seconds and not feel any fatigue. And because of the use of misdirection his eye would produce a small stream of blood that he could combo off into a blood-style jutsu in an attempt to end his opponent right there and then. Naruto was slowly starting to become a powerhouse with the Uchiha Dojutsu, something Sasori had also bragged about to Keys. Naruto and Sasori were still trying to figure out what his second ability was, but they hadn't had much luck in that regard. Most theories they had either came back entirely wrong or had made no sense. It was a work in progress but Naruto didn't mind the wait, he was looking forward to seeing where his Sharingan would take him, and he thanked Shisui every day for the power. He was broken out of his thoughts as the feeling of something started to tickle his cheek. Naruto gave a small laugh, closing the book in front of him and throwing his arm over his chair to look towards the door. All done for the day, Keys. Said girl giggled as she retracted her chakra string and nodded happily in Naruto's direction. Naruto laughed again as he watched the girl bounce her way over to him. She was wearing a nice comfortable black t-shirt with a light gold-covered zip-up jacket over it, perfectly matched with a pair of loose black shinobi pants and black sandals. Her long flowing brown hair was tied back into a high ponytail and reached just to the end of her neck. Her golden eyes seemed brighter and several small freckles had started to appear on her cheeks. She smiled wide as she jumped on the table Naruto was sitting at, not even bothering to use one of the chairs to his sides, and instead took a seat on the table. Keys raised an eyebrow at the book on the table and reached out before Naruto could say anything. Flipping it over she read the title and she frowned. Turning back to Naruto, she waved the book and pointed at it with her finger. You actually find this interesting? Naruto laughed again, quickly taking the book and reaching out and pinching the 9-year-old girl's cheeks. Keys yelled in annoyance but didn't try to run away, silently enjoying the attention since she hadn't seen him almost all day. Yeah, I'll have you know that I'm trying to figure out what my awesome new Mangekyo ability is. So I have to brush up on certain topics. But Naruni, those books are so boring. They always revolve around clans fighting against each other and it always ends horribly, she said childishly, crossing her arms with a huff. Naruto upon hearing his new nickname smiled wide. It was something new that she accidentally had called him during a night of late-night training. He had gone to go and put her to bed when she had a particularly bad nightmare that day. She had refused to leave Naruto's side and Sasori was quick to leave them, since he wasn't any better at comforting a loud crying girl. Naruto never left her side and she had called him that once she had finally calmed down and drifted off to sleep. And Naruto couldn't have been happier when he heard those words. Keys had seemed embarrassed at first but was happy to see that Naruto didn't mind, and in fact he welcomed it wholeheartedly. And ever since then he finally became the big brother he had wanted to be. Reaching out, Naruto gently pushed Keys off the table and with a yelp she tried to grab onto the table for support. Naruto chuckled as he watched as keys hit the ground with a soft thud and glared at him. You're just jealous I read at a higher level than you. Keys grumbled as she launched herself at the blonde. Naruto didn't even try to fight back. The young girl latched herself onto his back. Naruto laughed loudly as he playfully mocked the girl for her average reading skills. Keys had started to grow annoyed and formed thick chakra strings at her fingertips and fully wrapped them around Naruto's mouth. Even the chakra strings couldn't stop the sound of Naruto's muffled laughter as they stumbled through the room and back into the large training hall. Keys was beginning to enjoy her attack on Naruto until she felt the blonde stop moving. She blinked several times in confusion until she looked up. Her eyes went wide as she was met with two men standing in the center, one looking at them with disappointment, and the other's face covered with a mask. Why does this always happen the second I leave? Can I even leave you two alone? Sasori said as he put his head in his hand, suppressing the urge to pinch his nose bridge. He had only been gone just over an hour and they were already getting into hijinks. He swore he was starting to feel more like a father than a sensei, ever since he had come back one day and his entire puppy collection had been tampered with. Everything was out of order and thrown across the room and Sasori had to suppress the urge to actually kill those two. Ever since then never tolerated them messing around when he was gone. Only under his supervision could they have fun as long as they stayed close by and were out of harm's way. My god, I do sound like a father. Sasori internally groaned as Keys quickly jumped off of Naruto's back, her chakra strings vanishing as Naruto straightened up. Neither of the two had seen this masked man before, but they knew if he was with Sasori then he could be trusted. Keys stayed planted next to Naruto as the blonde glanced between the two of them. Sasori looked back towards his companion, bowing slightly in an apologetic manner. My apologies, they get like this sometimes and well. Oh please don't apologize Sasori. This was exactly what I had wanted. The man said happily, reaching up and removing his pink mask letting his pastel pink eyes known to the world. His gray hair was light, almost looking white as he looked down at the two kids. Sasori just sighed as he stepped back, allowing the man to do what he always did. The mysterious man hung his mask on his hip as he walked over and offered both of his hands to the kids. A pleasure to finally meet you Keys-san, and of course great to see you again Naruto-san, my name is Yuno. Apologies for making you wait so long for me. Naruto felt his eyes grow wide with shock at the man. This was the fabled Yuno he had heard so much about. The man who was supposed to meet them here and who had sealed the Sanbi, and had implanted the Sharingan into him. Keys wasn't really sure on why Naruto looked so shocked as she looked up at the man. The girl accepted his handshake with a nervous smile. Yuno just smiled back as he shifted his attention to Naruto. Naruto didn't even bother to return the handshake as he looked at Yuno with his face blank. This was the moment he had been waiting over a year for, to finally figure out who had killed Shisui. Naruto opened his mouth but before words could escape him Yuno had cut him off. Clapping his hands several times startling Naruto. Sasori, could you please prepare some tea while I speak with Naruto here? Alone. Sasori masked his surprise at Yuno but nothingness nodded his head along with him. He agreed and quickly whisked him and Keys out of the room. Keys looked like she wanted to fight back but one look at Sasori was enough to make sure rethink her decision. She had seen that look many times when she knew that her sensei was deathly serious. He was almost as serious when she had accidentally broken one of his favorite puppets. After the soft clicking sound echoed into the room, Yuno looked back down at Naruto. The room suddenly got very tense as they stared at one wave falling down from the small waterfall was the only sound that played in the room as Yuno walked directly past Naruto. How does a spar sound? Naruto's eyes went wide as he turned to see Yuno had walked all the way across the hall and stood directly in the center circle of one of the training spots. He had just finished removing his blue Atarashi cloak, folding it neatly before placing it on the ground. Naruto was a little apprehensive at first. He knew Yuno had to be strong. Sasori had praised Yuno time and time again for his incredible power and just from standing across from the man, Naruto could practically feel the heavy amount of chakra flowing from the man in waves. Yuno just smiled as he put his arms out, his eyes closing due to his large smile. Come on, why not? It's my way of apologizing for taking so long to get here, and after we're done I'll make sure to tell you everything. And that is a promise. Naruto grinned slightly himself as he walked until he was about 20 feet away from the man. Yuno smiled as Naruto had accepted his offer. He could tell the boy was a bit eager to hear the information he had for him. Maybe a little too eager. This was a way to calm him down so Naruto didn't end up doing anything drastic. And it was a good way to see how much the boy had improved since he last saw him. After all, Yuno was the one to give him the push in power. Fine, but after I want to know everything, Naruto said, not taking his eyes away as Yuno nodded, agreeing without a second thought. Of course Naruto, but please, do not hold back. I know all of your powers and it would be a waste not to use them. Yuno said. Naruto clicked his tongue in his mouth. That was true. He didn't even think about that. He was too preoccupied at seeing Yuno for the first time. Without a second thought he activated his dojutsu, making the man across from him grin. The grin soon faded away as Naruto was gone from his line of sight. Yuno stayed still as he waited a few seconds to try and figure out where the blonde had gone to. With another smile he ducked, dodging at seemingly nothing as wind rushed by him making his hair sway. With a yell of, Kai, Yuno had dismissed the blonde's genjutsu catching Naruto off guard. Naruto quickly performed a shunshin blazing past Yuno in a blur and sending his elbow into the man's gut. Yuno took the hit and the moment the blonde made contact Yuno swept at the blonde's feet. Yubo grabbed Naruto's arm so he couldn't get away as Naruto felt his legs fly into the air thanks to the sweep kick. The second Naruto's body hit the ground it exploded in a torrent of water. Yuno grinned again before jumping away. Naruto came flying down from the ceiling, his hand already stretched out towards his water clone. Water style, judgment chain. Yuno raised an eyebrow at the unknown jutsu as he watched the water take shape into a thick heavy chain and wrap itself around himself. Naruto landed on the ground across from Yuno as the older man just smiled, his face shining with mirth as he tested the jutsu's defense. Naruto didn't even try to hide the disappointment on his face as he tightened his fist slightly, making the chain grip harder around Yuno. Well, that was easier than I thought it would be. You impressed? Yuno laughed as he shook his head, making Naruto frown. It's a good jutsu, but not good enough. Yuno said as he flexed his body making the jutsu break. Water soared around the field as Naruto's eyes went wide. He had just put enough chakra into the jutsu that should have been enough to stop him in his tracks. Naruto scoffed as he raised his forearm blocking a punch that had come his way. He felt his eyes go even wider and barely had enough time to duck out of the harm's way from the katana that tried to slice him. Naruto retreated, shunshining backwards putting more space between the two of them. Yuno twirled his sword in his hand swinging in back and forth while doing so. He stuck the sword in the ground, leaning on the hilt as he formed a singular hand seal. Naruto felt his body tense at the motion. Yuno smiled at that. Fire style, majestic fireball jutsu. Naruto watched as Yuno breathed out the biggest fireball he had ever seen. His face glowed from the intense orange ball of heat as he formed his own signs, gathering as much water as he could from the waterfall and formed a large thick wall of water in front of him. The giant ball made contact against the wall ruthlessly. The ear-pinching sizzling sounds echoed in the room as Yuno felt his ears twitch. Looking to his right he raised his forearm to block a punch from Naruto who appeared on his right. Hearing the same thing on his other side he bent down, making another Naruto fly over him and straight into the other body of Naruto. Yuno grinned again as he gripped his sword, sending the blade directly into the two clones making them once again pop into plums of water. Sensing danger he jumped to his right, as the original Naruto came down on him from above. Naruto's fists indented itself into the ground, making a small crater appear as the spinning dojutsu looked annoyed at Yuno. Shunshining again he appeared directly behind Yuno, who was only mildly surprised by the boy's natural speed. Water style, water blast jutsu. Naruto extended his index finger forward, his hand taking the form of a gun and a large burst of water exploded from his fingertips. The jutsu impacted Yuno as the impact sent him flying forwards. Yuno reacted quickly. Using his sword he placed it in the ground as he slid backwards, barely having enough time to jump out of the way from his exact jutsu being used against him. He dodged the fireball only to be met with the front of Naruto's knee as it impacted with his face. Yuno this time actually winced in slight pain as his knee sent him back down to the flow. Naruto didn't lead up to the attack. Using the waterfall again he formed a large water dragon that sent itself roaring its way at Yuno. Yuno only tilted his head upwards as he laid on the ground, grinning as the dragon came closer and impacting onto the ground, splashing water upwards. Once the water finally cleared, Naruto noticed that Yuno was nowhere to be seen. Naruto scanned the arena, his body growing more tense as his Sharingan moved around rapidly. A sudden cracking sound broke his thoughts. Naruto below. Naruto cursed as he attempted to jump back, but Yuno had already grabbed a hold of his foot. The rest of Yuno jumped up from under the ground as his own knee impacted Naruto's gut. Yuno with speed that was almost impossible to follow with his Sharingan sliced at Naruto's legs. Naruto groaned from the pain as his blood leaked down his wound. Using his moment from his jump, he swung his arm downwards, using the blood from his now fully healed wound on his legs to form a small blood knife and attempted to stab Yuno. Yuno let go of the blonde's foot and brought his sword up to intercept the blood jutsu, but was incredibly surprised that the blood knife never made contact with him. Instead, the blood lost its shape, splashing over his katana and obscuring his vision. Naruto didn't give Yuno a moment to spare and with another shunshin, continued his assault, sending a chakra punch to Yuno's skull. Yuno's head flew back and he winced from the pain. Naruto didn't stop there. Using his free hand, he reached out, slicing his own palm against Yuno's katana, making a large streak of blood leave his open wound. Yuno didn't have much time as the blood formed a large spiral blade and thrusted itself over at him. Yuno rolled out of harm's way, the spiral blade stuck itself into the ground. Naruto had anticipated this and was quick to act, summoning a few water clones that quickly latched themselves onto Yuno. Two of the clones grabbed his arms while the real Naruto held a kunai to the man's throat. Naruto grinned as he looked down at Yuno. He was feeling pretty good that his plans were actually working against such a strong opponent. He didn't have much time to bask in his glory as Yuno returned his grin. He didn't even look hurt. Hey Naruto, how do you feel about lightning? Naruto's eyes widened and he didn't have enough time to back away as Yuno's body suddenly sparked, exploding into a current of lightning, electrocuting Naruto and making his clones die immediately. Naruto screamed as the electricity wrenched itself around his body. He had never been hit with a lightning jutsu before and it hurt like hell. As soon as the feeling vanished, he had to catch his breath. His hair was sticking up all over the place. Naruto felt his head become wobbly and barely even reacted to Yuno coming up from behind him. Yuno was certainly impressed with Naruto's skill level. He was easily powerful than most Junin and his plans would almost 100% work against most shinobi. Yep. Yuno was now certain that he made the right choice in sealing away the Sanbi in Naruto and implanting Shisui's Sharingan. He knew the boy would become strong, and this was even beyond his expectations. Yuno walked forward, swinging his sword forward, wiping it clean of the remaining blood as he stalked closer. Yuno raised a delicate eyebrow as he watched Naruto get to his feet, his body still trembling from the amount of electricity he had to endure, but Yuno was surprised to even see him standing. He had put enough chakra into that lightning clone to at least paralyze him for a few hours. Naruto turned his head, his Sharingan now a completely different shape than before as he glared at Yuno. He formed a blood senbon in his hand and sent it flying towards Yuno, and Yuno himself almost frowned at seeing the attack. The aim was very off, that wouldn't even make it to a target and there was barely any strength behind it. Then suddenly Yuno, a chill fell down his spine, a feeling he hadn't felt in years expanded to all of his senses as it exploded from Naruto. He tried to snap his head back to Naruto but found himself unable to do so. His eyes followed the blood senbon and as it soared past him, his face conforming into a deep look of pain as he gasped, blood flying from his mouth as he was finally able to look down. The gasp died in his throat as the bubbling tail of red chakra latched itself onto his throat. A long tear streak of blood leaked down Naruto's now Mangekyou Sharingan as his golden right shined brightly within his chakra cloak. With a strong force, Yuno was sent flying back, his body moving faster than ever as he impacted all the way into the opposite wall. The base shook from the impact and several pieces of rock actually started to break and fall from the roof. A large plum of dust hid the way to Yuno's body as Naruto breathed heavily. His Sharingan deactivated as he fell to his knees. He had fully used up all 5 seconds of his misdirection and he barely had any chakra left, which was why he resorted to Isabus. He felt his eyes roll back into his head as the chakra cloak receded back into his seal and he fell to the ground, unconscious. The sound of footsteps echoed down the room as Yuno walked towards Naruto. He was holding his arm, but other than that he looked completely fine. He looked down at Naruto with a large amount of pride. He didn't think Naruto would actually learn a Mangekyo technique or even have any control of Isabu's chakra. It was choking, he was stunned, and it even furthered his happiness that he had found Naruto on that fateful day. Amazing, I certainly wasn't expecting that. He even broke my arm, and I am definitely suffering from internal bleeding. If I was a lesser shinobi, that definitely would have caved my insides in on themselves. Yuno thought as he picked Naruto up with his free arm and walked down the arena to return with Sasori and keys. He had a deal to keep after all. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.